What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Blue Collar Enlightenment Show, where we learn new things every episode through conversations with guests from all around the globe. I'm your host, Jonah, and if you're new, welcome. Today's guest is Kevin Hall, an author that got his start writing a book for his children that spiraled into a career within the writing world. Let's find out more about him. Enjoy. How's it going, Kevin? How you doing?
I'm doing great. Jonah, how you doing these days?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm ready for this episode. Just got done with a brisk, quick workout. Feeling good, blood's flowing, mind is clear. I'm ready to ask some questions.
Oh, fantastic. Shoot away. I'm ready to answer.
So tell me and the listeners just a little bit about yourself.
Well, the good news is I'm retired and loving it. After about a 40-year career in the public sector, a couple of Fortune 500 companies, I retired at the ripe old age of 60, and I turned 66 next month, and I've just been enjoying it ever since. After, taking care of the wife's to-do list as much as I wanted to and getting some needed sleep, I then decided, okay, what do I do now? I got all this time on my hands. But I kind of found my way into becoming an author. And I did that primarily because of my grandkids. The grandkids, every time we visited them, they would come over to Grandpa and say, "Grandpa, tell us another story about when you were a kid. What was it like? What did you do? What kind of fun did you have?" So I would tell them all kinds of stories. And after a while, I got to thinking, my kids remember some of these stories. My grandkids may remember a few of them based on what I tell them, but my grandkids' kids won't really know anything. And I wanted to make sure that they had some idea of what their great grandpa was like. And for the grandkids, when they got older, having some kind of remembrance. I know from my perspective, I know some stories of my dad and my mom. I know fewer stories about my grandpa. I know nothing of my great grandpa. And I only know a little bit of my great great grandpa because he wrote a post Civil War book. And he at least let me know through the book some of the battles he was in during the Civil War. So with all of that as kind of a backdrop, I decided I wanted to start putting down these stories. So I grabbed a pen and paper at the time and started writing some of them down. And pretty soon I moved to the PC. Pretty soon I'm sitting down, clacking away. And next thing you know, I have a short story about a Christmas time I spent in Rosemont, Minnesota. And that actually became my first paperback book. It's not a published book. It's one I wrote specifically for the family and primarily for my grandkids, and gave it to them as the last gift on Christmas Day one year. And the look on their face when they opened it up and saw what it was, I mean, that just made the whole Christmas for me. All presents aside, all food, all family aside, just seeing that look on their face, that was enough for me. And that really kind of started my whole career on writing. So it's kind of a long-winded way of saying, where I've come from and how I kind of got into writing.
Well, that's pretty awesome that you were able to give that to your family, to leave that for them to give to future generations to know about you. I've done a little bit of digging on my past, and I've got back to the Civil War, but it's not much that I can really recite. I'd have to get with my aunt on that part. But what did you do before you retired?
Well, I had worked for, as I mentioned, two Fortune 500 companies, the first being the Eastman Kodak Company, and I was a computer programmer. And I did that straight out of college. And I was with Kodak for 18 years, saw them from a really one of their high points of over 110,000 people worldwide, over 50,000 right here in Rochester, New York. Um, and then I also saw them on their decline. My department was outsourced, and the company that bought it was called Danka at the time. They no longer exist, but I was with that corporation for 3 months and decided that was not for me. And I moved over to the Xerox Corporation. And at the Xerox Corporation, I really found kind of a niche that I excelled in, and that was in project management. And they hired me in to be a project management in their healthcare division of what they called their IBU, Industry Business Unit. And I really loved it. I had a great boss, and she really became a real good mentor, not just to me, but to the whole of our department. And we really did some amazing things. And it was with that department, Jonah, that I really started a lot of my travels around the country, brought me out to your neck of the woods in Oklahoma, as well as to other places, and meeting with a lot of customers, understanding their needs, transforming those needs into requirements, and then helping to fulfill those requirements with our technical solutions. And as a project manager, I was also the technical liaison to the customer for not just any technical questions that they had regarding the sales cycle, but also any questions they had during implementation and follow on. So that was really the second part of my career, and one that I really had a lot of fun with. And I enjoyed that for many years. And again, saw yet another company, the Xerox company, go through a very strong period in their growth, but also a very fast decline brought about by all of the digital revolution that was going on. And you can kind of see the writing on the wall that when you're selling what was called light lens copiers, so think about a giant office building that has copiers almost in every office, now being replaced with online digital copiers that can be accessed from your desktop computer. So it took, 7, 8, or 10 copiers and maybe condensed it down to one copier servicing several office areas. So that kind of led to a little bit of the decline in Xerox. And Xerox did fight their way back from that, and they're still doing fairly well today, managing through a lot of this ongoing digital revolution. And pardon me, my earbud just fell out.
Oh no, you're good. Yeah, I remember Kodiak and Xerox. How big they were, and I remember Kodiak falling pretty hard.
Yes.
Just from digital cameras, and then all these different photo editors that started coming out, and then
yes.
Yeah, it's just crazy to see how the last 20 years, especially, things have gone.
Oh, it's just amazing. And that's another thing, Jonah, that I've really kind of got into a lot with the writing of the book, is finding history of the areas. As I mentioned, and I just have my books here, so I'm going to hold the first one up. This was the paperback that I had printed by a local printer here in Rochester that I gave to my kids for that Christmas. And, the kids at the time were younger, and of course it had big type in it. You can see it was fairly large type, but it was basically just telling the story of that Christmas. So then that led really to my next book, which was on Ilion. And if you've ever shot a Remington rifle, this is the town that they're made in. Remington was really started back in the late 1700s with one of the Remingtons entering a shooting contest, and he had a gun that he had made, and he took second place in the contest. but several of the people there loved the gun he had produced and asked him if he would mind producing some for them. One thing led to another, and Remington Arms was started.
The rest is history.
The rest is history. So what I've done in these books, I tell the story. I grew up, this was my childhood up through the age of 13 spent in this town. I describe this town, Jonah, as the Mayberry of the East. It truly was the small town. At its peak was only 10,000 people. But it was a small town, the main street lined with brick buildings, and it had the corner store called Powers News, where you could go in, grab a magazine, a newspaper, a cup of coffee, talk to the people of the day. The town's bus stop was right there outside the newsstand. Across the street had stores like W.T. Grant's and National Auto and places like that. Just a fabulous small town to grow up in. Everybody pretty much walked to school. The only kids that were bused were those that were more on the outskirts. A lot of farms were on the outskirts of town. So really just a fabulous community, maybe 120 to 140 kids, something like that, in the high school at the time that I went there. So pretty small community. But what I've done within the books, Jonah, is I tell the stories of growing up about 75% of the book. But in the back of the book, I include a lot of the photographs of the town, what it was before. This town also went through urban renewal, and urban renewal kind of wiped out the town. Not a lot of folks in the town really appreciated it after urban renewal came through. They kind of sold it on a big promise and didn't really kind of fulfill the promise over the years. But I include a lot of that history. And one of the neat things that happened in that town, you recognize that gentleman? John F. Kennedy.
Yeah, that's JFK.
JFK came through the town and stopped there on one of his campaign speeches.
Oh,
and
awesome.
we were all, I was in grade school at the time, but all of the high school people were told, leave school, go downtown now. This is history. You want to be there. We're a small town, but because Remington was also known, I shouldn't say Remington, Ilion. Ilion was also known for things beyond Remington. There were many other factories. Univac was there. There was Mohawk Data Science had started up and moved over to Herkimer, which is right across the canal from Ilion. A lot of firsts came out of Ilion. The first woman that held an administrative position in an office in Washington, D.C., came out of Ilion, New York. They did so many things besides Remington, besides making guns, made sewing machines, typewriters, garden implements for big tractors. They had a whole powdered metal division that made powdered metal parts, gears and stuff that went into all kinds of vehicles and tractors and on and on. I kind of described the area between, I would probably say at the time, Rochester and Albany as the Silicon Valley of the East of its time. And we're talking about the late 1800s, early 1900s. And as such, because of its prominence, General MacArthur served on the board of Remington after the World War. John F. Kennedy came to town and gave one of his speeches there. There's a plaque in town marking the spot that he stood on. And I mean, it was just a phenomenal place to grow up in. The street lights at Christmas time were strung across the telephone wires and electrical wires in town, and the whole place was just lit up. And as a kid, we had a movie theater in town. I walked there and sat in the movie theater and watched the show. And after the show, everybody, as they were leaving, was handed a little box of ribbon candy. I mean, this was just the quaintest town and to have had that kind of adventure as a kid, it's just something that I marveled at. And I really wanted to record a lot of that for my grandkids, plus recorded a lot of history.
Yeah.
Now, this book is in the Ilion Library. It's in the Farmers Museum in Cooperstown. It's in the Herkimer County Historical Society. And I find out the first week after New Year's this year that it was the number one book checked out of the Ilion Library for all of 2022. And that's not according to Ilion. That's according to the Mid-York Library System, which governs all of upstate New York. So, I mean, I'm just flying high when I get that news that this book has resonated so well with the town. But that also led me, Jonah, into my next book. And what happened was when I turned 13, I'm in 8th grade, and this is probably April timeframe. My parents sat us down at the dinner table and said, "We got some news for y'all." And looking at them, thinking, okay, what's this news? They tell us that my dad's job is being transferred to Minnesota. And as of the end of my school year, the whole family is moving out to Minnesota. So that's kind of where this book ends. And the next book, my second published book, begins. And that is on the move out to what eventually became our home in Rosemont, Minnesota. And I'll tell you, was another experience of moving out there. But I don't know if you got questions. I kind of been doing a lot of talking and going along here.
Oh, no, you're good, brother. It's a crazy feeling because I have a similar experience to that, because when I was roughly 12, 13 years old, I moved to Tennessee.
Ah, okay.
And then I came back. It's an awkward feeling.
Yes.
Leaving everything, because I grew up in that town for 13 years, and then we just up and left. Obviously, I came back. It didn't take long. I was with my mom, my stepdad, and we moved out there, and I moved back here with my dad.
Mm-hmm.
But just starting over at that age,
yes,
is so hard. I mean, us as adults, it's like you're a kid, you get over it. But to us, it's so devastating.
It really was. I mean, I was kind of in Ilion. I knew my place in the town. I mean, I'm feeling like I knew my place in the world. We grew up there. Everybody knew everyone. You knew your next door neighbor. We often said, good fences make good neighbors, and everybody kind of obeyed that kind of unwritten law, if you will. No doors were ever locked in the town. And if somebody happened to be drunk some night and wandered into your house, well, you kind of just gave them a bed on the couch and said, sleep it off. And the next morning gave them a cup of coffee and sent them on their way. So,
lead them to the back patio, set them on the lawn chair.
and that's just the way it was in the town. But then I moved to Rosemont. Now, let me state this. I have really come to love my time in Rosemont. But that is not at all how it started out. My first week there, Jonah, at the new school, I'm, not knowing my way around the school. It's 3 stories. To give you an idea, there was probably 380-ish plus kids in my graduating class out of Rosemont. And at the time, I kind of described it as farming community meets city community. And they were all joined up in the school. And I'm leaving the class one day, and I had to head to the 3rd floor to go to my next class. And I'm heading up the back stairwell. Bunch of kids in the stairwell. We're all heading up. And we heard a ton of screaming and yelling going on. And remind you, this is my first week in this school. And I look up just in time to see one kid take his motorcycle helmet and wrap the other kid over the head with it.
Oof.
The kid that gets hit falls back against the wall, blood coming down from the top of his head. Kids just running. I mean, it was almost like cockroaches when the light turns on. They just scattered out of that hallway and up to their class. I'm not kidding you. I was shell-shocked. I didn't say much the rest of the day. I didn't really say much when I went home to my parents. I didn't know what to do. I come from this small town, and now I'm involved with, what is this? What is going on? This is entirely new to me. I don't know how to react. But over time, I managed through that. I started to make some friends. I have a lifelong friend that I made from there. We still talk regularly to this day. I visit him down in Florida, where he's now living. It's Brad Bixby. I refer to him as Bix. And I mean, we've just been lifelong friends. Our family has gotten together with their family over the years for vacationing and that kind of thing. And that came out of a friendship that we made my first year there in Rosemont. And I really do cherish a lot of the people that I met there. I've reconnected with many of them on social media. One of my friends, I'll mention that now, Sue Otten, she just finished walking the Appalachian Trail, the full trail, with her daughter Greta. And that's over 2,200 miles. And that's a lot. And they did that for Parkinson's. They finished up in Georgia just the week before Christmas. Greta's father, Sue's husband, has Parkinson's. So they were able to raise, right now standing at $80,000 for Parkinson's from that walk on the trail. And I went to the school with Sue out there in Rosemont back in the 70s, reconnected on social media, and just, again, I'm in awe at people like that.
Yeah, that's insane.
Wow.
It's crazy to see, as you grow older, the people that are around you, how they end up. And some of those people that you go to school and you think that are going to be great when they get out of high school end up being like some of the worst people.
There's a few of them, yes.
There's always those special ones that always get out there and do something with their time.
I gotta say, I've seen those people and understand they're there, but from my class, something, I don't know what it was. If it was something in the water, but I can tell you, Jonah, and I wrote about it in the book, people out of my class became CEOs of major corporations. One person, Karen Call, is very well known in the medical industry and has presented in front of Congress, either Congress or the Senate. And she was doing a lot of research during the days of COVID. Another guy owned an extremely successful car repair shop, one of the best rated in not Rosemont, but the Minneapolis-St. Paul area for several years running. On and on. We had lawyers, patent attorneys. She's trying to think of a school teach. I mean, just on and on, all the different things, executives and Coca-Cola and places like that. And it just amazed me, all of these people. And we were all, I mean, I can't say I was involved with all of them in a really tight clique, if you will, but we knew each other and we talked to each other and we were cordial to each other. And for the most part, we tried to help each other out while in school. And it was just amazing to see, once I let myself become more involved in that culture, how they also kind of brought me in and took me in. So I really appreciate that time out there. It may not have started off on the right foot, but I'm pretty sure it ended on the right foot because when I was a senior, I met the woman who would become my wife. And as of April this year, we will be married 47 years. So pretty amazing time and pretty amazing story coming out of there.
Well, congratulations on your lengthy marriage.
Thank you. Thank
That's
you.
definitely everybody's couple goal, I guess you could say. So is writing something that you do on a daily basis to fill your time, or do you just do it when you feel like it?
Kind of both, actually. I typically have the PC out at the kitchen table. It's just my wife and I here at the house. And so as I'm there, the mood hits me, I'll start to write. I may be doing something on social media, and all of a sudden it dawns on me, and I'll switch over and start to write. But a lot of times I'll take and write in the evening. I'll grab a cup of tea. As you see, I've got that right here. There's the tea bag hanging out of it. I'll grab the cup of tea and just start writing. And it's something that I really enjoy doing. It's almost like a bit of escape, even though it's more historical in nature for what I write. It's still an escape for me. It allows me, in part way, to relive all the good times. There were some not so good times, so I'm reliving those too. But in a way, I'm preserving all of this information. Yeah, this cord does not want to behave itself right now. But I'm preserving all of that information for future generations. Like my Ilion book, this book also has a lot of history in the back pages of it. As you can see, there's a picture there of the shopping plaza that I worked at while I was there. That shopping plaza does not exist in that same shape and fashion as it did. Another thing that I've done with the books is I try to do a lot of research. And you can see that plane that's right there on the roof.
Yes.
It's actually on the roof of a motel, and that was the motel that we stayed in when we first moved to Minnesota. It was called the Airliner Motel. And with that airplane on it, it became a fairly iconic landmark. And it existed for many, many years, a short distance to the airport. So a lot of the pilots would stay there. But when I went looking for this picture, I knew we had it somewheres in the house, but I was unable to find it. So I contacted all the historical societies out there, and there's a number of them. They wanted to get a hold of it, of a picture like that. They do not have it. They only have a picture of when the hotel was razed, and that was done during a controlled fire by the Eagan Fire Department. And so eventually I was able to track down that picture. And besides using it for the book, now all the historical societies out there have a copy of it. And again, they can maintain this for, posterity, as it were. So I do try to put a lot of historical aspects into the book. One of the things that has happened recently, it wasn't like this when I went to school there, was they have a huge marching band now at Rosemont, and it's played in the Rose Bowl parade as well as others. And it has done extremely well, and the school is very well noted in Minnesota as far as scholastics go, and as athletics go too. They have a very good athletic program, and always did. Even when I was back there, we did very well in sports, and especially for me, basketball was kind of something that I like to watch. So we did very well in that. So I tried to, long story short, put a lot of history into the books and kind of keep that, again, for not only enjoyable reading, but also research if somebody's into the need of that.
And that picture that you just showed us has a little bit of a story behind it. Now, I was going to wait till later in the show, but we're going to go ahead and get to it.
Okay.
because you have a new book coming out, correct?
Yes.
And it's a little bit different than what you've been writing.
Yes,
It's
it
the
is.
same, but it's different, right?
Yes. Yes.
You
Yes.
start taking a dip into a little bit of uh different avenue. You want to go ahead? You want to tell us, or you want to keep it secret?
I'm going to say just a little bit about it, Jonah, but there is a ton of research going into that book now. And I hope to be in contact with some well known folks in regards to it. But in regards to the picture right there, we knew, both my wife and I knew we had that picture somewheres in the house. And during COVID, we had taken all of the pictures during lockdown. We had nothing else to do. We took all the pictures that we had and laid them out on our dining room table. It flowed into some of the dining room chairs. It flowed onto the dining room floor. We got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pictures. So we decided we were going to catalog all these pictures and put them into folders and binders and that kind of stuff. Well, we kind of got part of the way there. But while doing that, I was writing my second book here. And I said, well, geez, now that I got all those pictures laid out there, let me look to try to find the picture of the airplane. And we looked around. My wife and I both looked over that table. I can't tell you how many times. And we'd go around and she'd be on one side, I'd be on the other. We'd be looking at pictures. When after dinner some days, I said, I'm going to go check again. And I'd go into there and I'd look all over it. Could not, I'm not kidding you. We probably looked through those pictures at least a dozen times, if not more, trying to find that picture. Well, we have had a number of what I will call, for right now, incidences or experiences that have happened both to my wife and I that kind of border on the, wow, that was weird. What caught? I mean, oh, that kind of feeling gets invoked in you
A
when you
little bit
start
of
thinking about
There's
this.
a little bit of unknown phenomenon going on there,
Yes.
huh?
Yes. And I'm only hesitant in the speech because I don't want to call it what I do in my next book, because that's also going to be the title of the book.
Oh, it's a secret. It's a secret.
So I'm holding off. I am trying also at this time to, like I mentioned, get in touch with a couple people who could help really strengthen the voice that I want to put into that book. So with all of that aside for right now, some of the things that we have experienced over time has caused us to realize that maybe the departed, and both my wife and I have lost several members of our family over the years, maybe they're not quite gone. And with that, I have found at times comfort in just saying aloud, hey, maybe it's my dad, my mom, or my brother Butch. Could you help me with this? I'm kind of struggling with that, et cetera, et cetera. Well, as I mentioned, we went around that dining room table at least a dozen plus times. We could not locate that picture. And I got to the point where I finally said out loud, and my wife will tell you, she heard me say it, Butch, Mom, Dad, if you find that picture, could you put it someplace I can find it? Could you direct me to it, etc., etc.? I will just say, Jonah, that within a matter of probably a week to 8 days, I'm back into that dining room table looking around. And without telling all of the story, I'll just say I found that picture in a spot I had checked many, many, many times, and so did my wife. And we both just kind of know when we see things like that, that it just further strengthens us both in our faith as well as in the understanding that, we do not pass on into nothingness. We feel strongly that there is more to this, that there is an afterlife. So my next book kind of gets more involved in that, a lot more stories, a lot of experts weighing in, and I'm hoping I can get in touch with this one gentleman who survived the 9/11 attack, and he was on the floor just below where the plane came in, and debris all over. He managed to get out into the hallway, and when he's in the hallway, he's presented with several stairwells: stairwell C, stairwell A, B. And as he was looking around, he'll tell you in his own words, he felt almost like a hand on his shoulder pushing and directing him to stairwell A. He makes it to stairwell A. He goes down, and as he's going down a couple of floors, he starts to hear someone crying out for help. Upon getting closer, he sees a gentleman trapped under some debris. He starts talking to him, reaches his hand in. The guy under the debris reaches his hand back. He pulls the guy out, and the two of them walk out of the building to safety. And this guy has been interviewed on several broadcasts. He's done YouTubes, and I've been able to track him down, and I'm trying now to arrange for a conversation with him.
Are you willing to say his name?
Not at this time.
Not this time. Okay. Nice.
Not at this time, because, then people might go out and start to hound him, and I don't want that yet. I do not want to cause him any undue harm or stress. He's probably still got a lot of thoughts of 9/11 and that horrific day. So I just want to talk to him more about his feelings from that day and what he has maybe experienced since. Another gentleman that I'm trying to get in touch with, and I'll mention his name, Dr. Christopher Kerr. He's a doctor of hospice and palliative care at the Buffalo Center, Buffalo, New York. And he has given TED Talks. He has written a book, and he has chronicled, videotaped over 1,500 plus hospice patients and their experience in dying. And he says, as a doctor, he was taught to fight death at every corner. Do not leave any stone unturned, but defeat death at all possible. And through this, his time at hospice, he has learned that really death is another process. And there's signs for it. There's things that happen to the folks that are dying. And a lot of times he describes it as a debate between the dying physical self and the live and lucid spiritual self. And it's very interesting to hear his TED Talks. And he'll say he's not extremely religious, but he does believe there is more to this than really meets the eye. So all of that as a backdrop, that's going to be part of my next book. So it's really been an exciting journey for me in writing of that book. In fact, I was writing a little bit more just before this podcast. And so I talk about the experiences both my wife and I and others have had. I've had some folks come forward and tell me some of their stories. So I've asked for permission to put those in the book. And like I said, I hope to get these two individuals that I mentioned to, have a discussion, a sit-down interview with them, and offer that up into the book too. So should be hopefully coming out later this year. And I am really excited on that one, as it has taken a lot of time. I will say this, there's been some emotion that it has caused in me as I have to go through and remember and relive some of these experiences.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions was how is it to sit and think about all those details about every story that you write about, good and bad.
I will tell you the good ones, you almost feel after writing it down like you're lighter, you're floating, you're exuberant. I mean, you really feel charged up by it. And I know in talking to David Edwards, I know you had him as a guest on your show. We also chatted about this feeling, and he feels the same way, energetic and charged after having do it. Um, and I described it to him as almost being a bit cathartic in a sense, in that there's this big release. But I will also say, when you write about some of the bad things and remember some of those details, it can really get you into a deeper, dark place that you're not feeling very good.
Mm-hmm.
But you know it's part of the journey. You know it's part of what you want to bring forward and bring those messages out.
Yeah,
And
it's
that's
definitely
another thing I want to do with the book.
yeah, it's definitely part of you. No matter what you go through, it's just still going to live with you, good or bad. It's part of who you are today.
Absolutely is.
It's helped
Absolutely.
shape, evolve you and your outlook on life, whether it be good or bad. It
Yes.
still has had the effect on you.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so it's all part of the journey, you know?
Absolutely. And I gotta say, Jonah, I didn't set out to really write books. It wasn't a lifelong goal. I had thought it maybe one time back in, maybe I was 30, 40, that, yeah, it'd be nice someday to write a book. I almost feel like this journey now is choosing me. I have to write these books. And I have so many more stories coming to me. It's almost like I can't shut it off.
Yeah, it's funny. You just answered a couple of questions that I had. That's funny. Um, and you were talking about a few things with us and the afterlife, and just a little teaser for everybody out there. I do plan on having a few people here in the near future coming up, and we'll be having those discussions as well, between consciousness and near death experiences and different things of that nature. So I'll be diving into a little bit of that here in the future as well.
Well, I'll definitely be listening into those. And when I write the book, Jonah, I will definitely let you know. We'll get back on and we'll chat about it for sure.
Heck yeah, I plan on getting your books, and I try to send them out, and I get my books signed, and get them back to me so I can have my little collection going. So I'm a little bit behind on the book part of sending those out to get those signs, but uh, I'm catching up to it.
Yeah, cool,
A
cool.
little bit of memorabilia from everybody.
Uh, yep, yep.
Uh,
So that's kind of where I'm heading now. I'm hoping, like I mentioned, to have that book out later this year, and then I think I'm going to take a little deviation. I've got a children's book, and this will be stories that I told my grandkids when they were young. I used to get right down on the floor with them and take some of they had different dinosaur creatures and different kind of other molded animals and stuffed animals, and I just make up stories and tell them and get them giggling and laughing and stuff. And so I plan to put some of those stories down, and then I've kind of got a bit of an adventure story. So that one, I'm probably targeting within 2 years to have that one out. So a lot more on the writing front. In the meantime, this is the other thing folks don't tell you when you're an independent, or what's been termed indie author.
yeah.
is you're the one that has to do everything. You have to not only write the book, you have to get the book published. Well, to get the book published, you got to get a cover. You have to get, if you want copyright, you got to send to the copyright office and get those. You have to get an ISBN number, on and on and on. And then you have to begin the next journey, marketing the book.
Oh, Lordy. I have one of my good friends from early on in the podcasting world. I actually spent time and took a vacation and went down and met her and talked. And, we hung out the whole time we were down there. But Pepper Ann, she's an author that I brought on a long time ago. And she has a book of about true crime. And I believe it's her uncle or cousin was part of a cattle. They stole cattle.
Oh,
A big ordeal down there, and her issue was getting out of her own way. And I preach this all the time on my podcast, and the people that listen to me, they'll probably get sick and tired of me saying to this. But did you feel like when you were publishing these books that getting out of your own way was the hardest part?
for me, yes, as I don't like really selling things to people. And I don't mind talking to them and telling them about it. And, even giving it to the libraries and telling people, go to the libraries and get the book if you're interested. But selling the book, it's not where I excel. you know, I was always working with the marketing and sales team and all of that. I was not the marketing person.
You did not pick up any of their tips and tricks. I'm the same way, man. Marketing my podcast is the hardest thing to do because the best way to do it is word of mouth.
Yes.
And so everywhere, I got so sick and tired of it. Everywhere I go, just bothering people with it, blah, 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 blah. I still do it.
Yeah.
It's like back in my mind, like, you sound like a moron. But in all reality, it's good for the show.
Yes.
I'm trying to sell the show, and the show itself is its own entity. I'm just here for the ride. I'm here to ask the questions, but this show has its own railway and goes where it wants to.
Yes. But you have to get the word out. I mean, you want to have fun doing it. You want to invite clientele to it, and you want to have an audience that can enjoy seeing the message. And I mean, I decided to do a little experiment. I have not really advertised during this month of February the way I have in all the previous months since my book has come out. I mean, I would try to go out with a weekly, almost like a news flash out in the social medias around my books. And as a result, the sales would come in. I'd get calls from the library saying, okay, we just had these checked out. We're going to order another one. And people ordering them. I can see all the orders on Amazon. You don't know who's buying it, but the orders are coming in. Well, as a result, this month's orders have dropped way off. And if I don't market it, it's not going to get out there. So again, in March, I'll renew those efforts. And the teaser there will be the upcoming book. Hopefully, at that time, too, I will have my website up. My website is active now, but it's not to the point that I want to release it. Right. So I'm hoping by March 1st, it will be there. I can release it. And I'm going to put a lot of stuff out there, not just information about the book. I'm going to put tips for writing, as I had folks ask me, well, how do you begin? I've always wanted to write a book and leave something for my kids, but I don't know where to begin. So I'll have tips for doing that. I'll have links to other author sites that I know of. So things like that. All my podcasts will be listed there, including including this one, Jonah. You will be listed prominently on my website. And, you know, I'm just having so much fun doing that I really want to share it all. But then there's still that little voice in the back of my head saying, well, don't be so braggadocious. You don't need to do that. If you don't, nobody finds you.
Yeah, you're right. I had to buy my domain name. I had to buy my website. I spend more money on my podcast than my podcast makes me. I literally make $0.00 per month off this podcast.
Yeah.
Off my podcast, off Google, YouTube doesn't pay me. I do this for free. And, I spend, 3-4 hours a night doing this. After everybody's in bed, I get in here, go to bed by 11 o'clock, get up 5 o'clock, start my day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a grind, but I love doing it. I love the conversations that I've had with people, the people that I've met. It's just been an amazing journey so far, especially being past a year. Mm-hmm. I didn't even realize it. And I got a notification from Spotify saying that I've been doing this a year, and I was like, wow. It's been crazy. And the amount of stuff that you learn on the journey, whether it be an author, podcast, YouTube channel, whatever you do, the amount of work that goes into it, people don't understand.
Oh, there is a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And as I tell folks, as you begin writing, that's just the beginning of the work. You get your book done, you're not finished. That's almost, I would say, knowing what I know now, that's maybe 40% of the journey.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's 50%. It's the important 40%. But if you don't get out there and market it, I've been to book signings, I've been to podcasts. I've been written up in my college alumni newsletter, just different things like that. And if you're not out there, I'm trying now to get into several radio stations back in the Mohawk Valley for my Ilion book, as well as out in the Twin Cities for my Rosemont book. I'm constantly sending them emails. I have tried to get on to some major, and I'm talking folks like, well, I won't even mention their names. Let's just say they're major daytime radio, syndicated radio shows, and talk to them not just about the books, but about the whole plight of the indie author. Mm-hmm. I mean, millions of books get written a year, and it's only a very, very select few. I was looking at some statistics the other day. You're talking maybe 0.00 something gets recognized and becomes a major author. You don't really make money until you're somewheres beyond that, more to the right of that decimal place.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy to think, how many people are doing the same thing that you are.
Yeah.
And how crazy to think how much that you have to talk about what you're doing. And the best way to do it is make yourself a script and just read it over and over and over and over again. And whenever you bring it up, there's a script, leave it at that, call it a day.
Yes. One of the things, Jonah, I do is I'm on podcast.com, is something you're probably familiar with. And it lists all these podcast potentials that you can go on to. You can put your name and profile out there. And when you sign up for a podcast, they ask you all this information. Well, that's what I've done. I've just scripted it, I copy, I drop it into the response and send it on. And it's all part of the marketing. For you, I got to actually watch you and David Edwards, and I said, oh, that'd be kind of fun. So that's how I got in contact with you and went from there. And I mean, I just enjoy doing this. I enjoy talking about the books and the journey that I made. And part of my hope that is in doing that, others won't feel so intimidated about sitting down and writing. There's a comedian who's also an author, Stacy Demolsky, and
Mm-hmm.
I've taken a writing course from Stacy. And one of the pieces of advice she has, and she comes right out and tells people, eventually there comes a time that you just have to sit your butt down in the chair and write.
Yep.
And that's what I tell people. I show them how to get started. I'm a proponent of the outline. Start with even a few bullet points, flesh those out a little bit more, and keep doing it. And maybe take one of the bullet points, start to write a little more around that. And when you're comfortable with that, take the next one, start to write some. And pretty soon, you're starting to see chapters form. You're starting to see more of a book starting to come together, and you just write. And the outline guides you, directs you perhaps. You're not married to it as far as the order. You can always change the order of things around, but it gives you a starting point. And so that's what I try to direct people and tell them about it. And that's really kind of how I start. And even with my next book, I've got a 2-page outline all for it, and I add to it. Right now, I'm to the point, Jonah, that I'm doing some editing, going back through the various chapters. I do that while I'm waiting for these contacts that I'm trying to make to get back to me. But this is all part of the writing process. And you keep doing that till it comes a point, and this is another thing, you've got to be careful of what I've termed, and I take this from my work in the corporate environment, analysis paralysis. There comes a point in time that you got to say, you've done enough.
Mm-hmm.
You've edited it. You like the cover. It's not going to be 100% perfect. And I've talked to several authors, and I asked them the question, have you ever gone back and read your stuff? And they tell me, no, they do not want to. They have done that before, and they look at it and say, there's so many things now that they know that they wish they knew then, and they would want to change it all. So you have to get over that fear, and you just proceed forward to write your story.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my advice to folks. I hope that they get that also from the books. I give them a format in the book if they want to follow it, because I've had folks ask me about that. Oh, you've got a unique format. Is that something that is only yours, or can I use that? And I said, no, use it. Go ahead. I just created it. Go ahead. Use it. I don't care. If it helps them tell the story, go for it. But one thing I will say, Jonah, is a lot of the readings that I've done around how many people actually write a book, and there are quite a number of people who write a book. There was a study done, and I want to say it was 2002 was maybe the last time it was done, and they asked folks how many of them would like to write a book. And out of 100 people, now they did it on a much larger scale, but to bring the percentages down, out of 100 people, 80% said they wanted to eventually write a book.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, of those that actually did it, 0.08%, less than 1% of the people actually write the book.
That's insane.
Yeah. I think, and I
It's
think
still
about
a lot of people, though.
It is a lot of people. It is a lot of people. But then I think, Jonah, as I mentioned earlier, I know some of the stories of my father and my mom. I don't know much about my grandpa, but I know some. I know about my great-great-grandpa. But in doing some research, I also found out we have some very noted folks in our line. Winston Churchill is a relative of mine.
That's pretty
Lyman Hall, the signer of the Declaration of Independence, is a relative of mine. Now, they're not in my direct line, but we all come from a gentleman called John Hall that in the 1630s came to the it wasn't the United States at the time, but came to the 13 colonies. He landed in Massachusetts. And of course, as all the begatting went on back then, he begat a lot of kids who begat a lot of kids. And one path led over to Clarissa Hall, who is the grandmother of Winston Churchill. Clarissa Hall's daughter married Winston's father. And so he's in the line. And another begatting went all the way down through to Lyman Hall, who was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. But I bring all this up because I understand this history by doing the research. And back in the day, there used to be tons of family Bibles. And in the family Bible, the ancestors would write down a lot of the ancestor tree and the history and the notoriety and things like that. That's not done. That's all been lost.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, if we don't start to write some of this stuff down, what do we have? Well, we have a lot of social media, and we all know how correct that is.
Yeah.
So where do we put all of this information that we got locked away up here of our history?
So I'm going to plug something for the people that don't want to write the book. I brought a gentleman on. He came up with this thing called My Archive. And what it is a online database that you pay one-time fee, and forever your family can go and you can take your old pic, like you say you have all those pictures, right? Well, you can take those pictures, show it, and tell the story behind it in your own words right there in front of you. Archive it, and then when you pass away, what it does is it files everything together, and a person has the ability, you have the ability to go in and watch everything.
Cool.
So your whole family for the rest of forever, until technology doesn't work no more.
Yep.
Your family will be able to go in, see your pictures, see the story behind them in your words, in your voice, on video right there for you. Now, that's for the people that don't want to write books.
There's also another one out there. If you want it in book format, there's a few different ones. One's called Storyworth. And with Storyworth, what they do is you sign up, you pay a fee, and they send you one question every week. You can write the questions, or they have a stack of selected of questions that you can select from. And that goes to whomever you want it to go to, and they write an answer out to that question, and they're directed to write as much information as they can. I have a good friend whose daughter gave this to her grandparents as a Christmas gift, and every week the grandparents would get this question and they would sit down at their PC and they'd type in the answer to it, and they'd embellish this and that and add all the story behind it. And at the end of one full year, all of that is compiled into a hardbound book. And that book then is sent to the recipient. In this case, the girl's grandfather will get the book.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And it's called Storyworth. It's been around for a while, and it's not expensive. I want to say last I saw it, it was probably $99 to do it. You get one book out of it, but I think it's kind of worth it. You don't have to go through all of the writing and the editing, but what you put in is what you get back. So,
there's some grandparents out there that you might not want them stories from. Oh, Kevin, I got a few more questions for you.
Sure, shoot.
So we talked about what your future looks like. So What's been the most enlightening moment of your journey?
Oh, For me, I think it really is how the grandkids have taken to the books. I my grandkids are readers. They have been readers, but to see them in the different stages, some took to it right away and read it and asked me some follow-on questions. Some I'd have to egg them on a bit and say, "So, what did you learn about Grandpa this week?" And do that kind of thing. So that I think has been the most enlightening part personally from the profession of writing, just all the detail that's behind that goes into creating a book and writing it and bringing it out and marketing it and just learning all the nomenclature that's involved. They got their whole language of their own. And I came out of a printing industry, but they have a whole language onto themselves. So that part from a professional writing perspective has been enlightening to me.
And in your case, sitting down and we had talked about it, going through and reliving a lot of those emotions and a lot of those experiences, it has to make you think about different things as well.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of introspection that goes on when you're writing these kinds of books. There's a lot of even, what if this happened? What if that happened? Kind of thoughts that come up while you're writing it. My wife and I say to this day, what if my dad decided not to take that job? And they're originally from Illinois. And what if her mom, who got transferred out to Minnesota, decided not to move to Minnesota? None of this would have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that really causes the mind to start to whirl in a whole bunch of different directions.
That's a rabbit hole. You kind of just fill some dirt over and just pack it.
Yes.
Let's just leave that where it's at, because I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
Absolutely. I understand that entirely.
Oh man. So where can everybody find you social medias wise? You said your website's not ready to
Right.
drop.
I'll give out the website right now, and it's www.kevin-hall.com. And I hope to make that an HTTPS site pretty soon. But for right now, it's the www site. Folks can go there. It's active. It has links to my books. My books can be found on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Goodreads. I even saw it on Walmarts.com one day when I was doing some searching around. It's amazing. You type in I don't use Google, but DuckDuckGo is the one I prefer. And I go to that and just type in my book title. And it's amazing to see all the different sites that it's on. It's out on eBay. I found it there. So the book is available. It is also available through the library in the Dakota County part of Minnesota, which is right I'll say it's neighboring Minneapolis, but it almost extends itself into Minneapolis. So you could find it there. You can find it, my Ilion book, in the Ilion Library. As I mentioned, the Farmers Museum in Cooperstown. If you know about the Baseball Hall of Fame, Farmers Museum is another museum in the same town. Also, it's in various different historical societies. And if all else fails, I have a link to my email address right inside the website. You could always contact me and I can get you out a book too.
Right on. I'll make sure to put it down in the description so you can just go down there and click on it. But I was going to say it's been an awesome conversation, and I appreciate you coming on. You're always welcome back, and we will bring you back on to talk about that new book and future writing again.
I look forward to that, Jonah. This has been a lot of fun. I really enjoy talking to and meeting people. It's that too is also one of the pleasures that writing these books have brought to me. I'm meeting a lot of folks around the country, and really enjoying the talks I'm having with them.
Yeah, that once you start that network, it seems to just grow itself.
I'm loving it. I mean, I'm talking to comedians out in California. I'm talking to old colleagues in Washington State. I'm talking to folks that I had never met. I watched Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe, and there's a company called J.O. Spice that he went to. And I started talking to them to order some of the spice. One thing's leading to to another, and we're starting to talk about the books I'm writing. So it's just been a whole lot of fun doing this, and
Speaking of
I've been enjoying it.
if Mike Rowe ever hears this, I tried to get a hold of him one time to get onto the podcast, but that didn't work out. I actually tried to get a hold of him to come to my job because I got one of your dirtiest jobs out there. This sprinkler water is nasty.
Keep doing it. I will tell you, I've also tried Mike Rowe, and I did get through to their administration, and they said they would bring it over to whatever group that decides on what folks can get onto his podcast. And I even brought up the fact that, Mike, you've helped your mom, who had been a struggling author for many, many years. And this really is the plight of the indie author out there. And there is tremendous amount of good books that people just don't know about. And to bring something out on a podcast like his, I did unfortunately just receive notice after several weeks of going back and forth that they decided it's not right for their air at this time. So I kind of struck out on that one. But, I'm still going to watch his show. I still listen to his podcast. I think he's a tremendous individual, and he's done a lot in the society. I donate to his foundation. I've even had some of his noble whiskey that he promotes. Pretty darn good stuff. A little expensive, but pretty darn good stuff. So,
those celebrities, they got to have their money. So,
well, the good news is I've also, believe it or not, I have looked over his foundation's P&L. He puts it right out online.
Yeah.
And I will say, for the most part, he has extremely low expenses, and all the money does pretty much get channeled into grants that he gives out to very deserving individuals.
Oh, super great dude. Super great dude. Yep. I've always been a fan of him, and Dirty Jobs and the Blue Collar Enlightenment Show, that'd be a good fit right there. So
I think it would be. I think you got something there, Jonah. And, if there's any way I can help, I'll definitely drop a line. I've kind of been known to him as the pest. That's how I kind of bill myself every time I was writing in. And I'm not kidding you. It was almost a full year solid. I would write in every couple of weeks. And I just say, this is the pest again. And one of the administrators is Sherry. And so got to communicate a few times with Sherry. And, it's funny. Chuck is his sidekick on these podcasts. And Chuck and him go back to school. And so they've been lifelong friends for many, many years. And I even described that my buddy Bix and I mean, it's 51 years this year that we've been friends. The only thing is we don't sing. Chuck and Mike sing all the time. We don't sing. So you do not want to hear my buddy Bix and I sing. No way.
Well, he needs to do an episode on Dirty Jobs about the fire sprinkler trade, because that's a really dirty job.
I keep bugging them, and I'll mention it to them too. I don't mind going back and dropping them a line. What's the worst they can say?
No.
No.
Well, all right, man. I appreciate you coming on, and hold on a second. After we get off here, we'll get everything downloaded. So,
all right, sounds good, Jonah.
All right, bye, everybody. That's all the time we have for today. Head over and check out our website, thebceshow.com, where you can subscribe to the email list and contact us. But remember to leave us a rate and review. Helps the podcast with that pesky algorithm. Thanks for listening, y'all.